Okay, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today on AI for Digital Democracy, How to Navigate Opportunities and Threats. And we're glad to have audiences on both Zoom and LinkedIn today. My name is Nikhil Kumar. I'm the resource manager at People Powered, and I'm based in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm excited to moderate today's event. Before we get started, let's go over some technical details. This session will use automated translated captions. If you prefer to follow the event with captions in another language, please click on Show Captions, as you can see on the screen, and choose your preferred language. If you can't find this option, let us know in the chat, and Maria and Ryan can assist you. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? In today's event, you'll be learning about the latest innovations in digital participation, especially key trends in the use of AI, considerations for selecting a digital participation tool, as well as best practices for designing digital programs. And we'll also be sharing several capacity building resources that you can use in your work. And in terms of how the agenda will flow, we'll start with some introductions, and then you'll hear short presentations from our speakers, and then we'll get into a very interesting discussion with them. And we'll close with some concrete ways that you can get support for your digital participation program. I'm very excited about our speakers today. We have a lineup of experts in civic tech and digital democracy from several different continents. So we have Matt Stempek from the Civic Tech Field Guide. Hi, Matt. We have Rima Patel from Elgon Social Research. Hello, Rima. Yahweh Chu from the FNF Global Innovation Hub in Taipei. Hi, Yahweh. And finally, Melissa Sasengwe, our program associate here at People Powered. Hi, Mel. And as I said, I'm Nikhil Kumar, and I'm moderating today. So first, a little bit about People Powered. We're a global hub for participatory democracy. Next slide, please. And our mission is to expand people's power to make government decisions by supporting organizations and governments building participatory democracy around the world. So how do we do this? We provide global support to help governments transition to more participatory democracy. And this includes communications, capacity building resources, as well as support programs. And we do this together with a global community of practice, including member organizations and individual members who are doing participatory democracy on the ground, as well as with our partners from international organizations and funders around the world. Before we get into the presentations, we'd love to hear from you. So a little warm up. If you could type in the chat one opportunity or threat that you think AI poses for participation online. So it could be an opportunity or a threat. Don't be shy. Fake personas, profiling of certain groups. I'm seeing a lot of threats. Heightening polarization. Okay. I like an opportunity to amplify the people's voice, to make it more accessible to leaders. That's a good idea. Taking away agency from citizens. An opportunity is processing massive amounts of information, creating more avenues for knowledge. Okay, this is great because I think the audience, yeah, you guys seem very attuned to both the potential for AI to support participation as well as the kind of the risks of it. So we're going to get into all of this with our speakers. And I think you'll be very interested in today's event. So before we get into the presentations, I want to take a minute to clarify what we mean when we talk about digital democracy, participation, and AI. So there's a two-way relationship between digital tools, including those that use AI, and participation. So when digital tools are used to support a participatory program, for example, using a platform to collect ideas and vote in a participatory budgeting process, we often use the term digital participation. In the other direction, when digital tools are being developed through participation, so that could look like engaging people in decisions around how AI should be governed or how digital platforms should protect users' privacy, we often use the term digital democracy. And our discussion today will touch on both of these topics, which of course are interconnected. And of course, I also know that different people use different terms, but these are kind of this is kind of how we think of it at People Powered. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our first speaker, Rima Patel, who's going to talk to us about strategies for including public voices in AI. Over to you, Rima.
Thank you. Firstly, I just wanted to say how great it is to see over 200 people in this conversation, this call, not least because it's such an important issue. And I also wanted to pick up on this point about the opportunities and threats, which is going to be the basis of the talk that I give. So essentially, the scope for AI to improve participation, but also the challenges that we face around AI diminishing agency. Next slide. In terms of diminishing agency, how do we frame the problem? And one way of framing the problem is to talk about AIcracy, which is the dynamic that we are now beginning to see between big tech and politics and politicians. So these power dynamics, as revealed or illustrated by the relationship between Elon Musk and far-right Trump campaigners, illustrates that we need a much more power literate approach when we're thinking about the governance and use of AI and big technology in wider life and landscape and policy making. At the moment, the AIcracy is locking people out of the ability to make decisions and diminishing their agency. And what good looks like is currently defined top down. And we see that in dynamics that enclose people's data, seek to manipulate and control them, rather than support them to use AI in the broader civic interest. And I know Matt Sempek is going to be talking about this very shortly. So the key question here is, how do we move beyond data and AI enclosure and digital authoritarianism? Next slide. The first way is to recognize that AI is currently in a deficit model dynamic. So we have technologists and we have politicians and policymakers designing AI technologies and using that to manipulate, control members of society, really shape the way they behave. And Arnstein described it as a sort of shaping of behavior, really not contributing to increased agency. And the deficit model approach is when knowledge is assumed to be with the technologists and politicians. In a dialogue model, which is more what we want to see when we're thinking about AI, knowledge is recognized to be with all actors in society. So that might be technologists, it might be policymakers, but it's also society, business, networks, civil society, members of the public. So the key thing we need to do is to move from the deficit model to the dialogue model. Next slide. So why should we do this? And I am inspired by the work of Paulo Freire in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Freire positioned dialogue as about building society's capability for critical reflection, and I add in on AI. So the first point is that dialogue is a tool for mutual understanding and our critical consciousness over and shaping AI. It's about transforming our own ability to actively question and investigate our world and the role AI plays in the world, rather than passively just being done to, through, and mediated by AI. It's about what we call practice, or what Freire called praxis, which is that we need to reflect on AI and technology's impact on our world so that we can truly build that sense of agency that you're all talking about in the chat. And it's also about solidarity and collaboration. So the right-hand side dialogue model illustrates the importance of that solidarity and collaboration amongst people who are impacted by AI systems, so that they can collectively confront, transform AI systems that work for themselves. And it's worth noting this tradition of influencing participatory practice remains today. So Freire's work has influenced Augustus Boal, who has pioneered forum and legislative theatre, so arts-based approaches to activating participation and shaping a variety of outcomes, including technology. Next slide. We also need to move to this dialogue model so that we can improve outcomes for AI so that they're more effective for people in society. On the right-hand side, some of you might see a duck and some of you might see a rabbit. The key point is that unless we get people who see ducks and rabbits in dialogue with each other about difficult conversations, we're unlikely to develop AI that truly works for everyone. Next slide. And equity and well-being. So we all have different lived experiences, and these lived experiences are shaped by our individual lifestyle factors, our characteristics, where we live in the world. They're also shaped by the social and the community networks that we're part of, and they're shaped by our experiences of privilege, advantage, and disadvantage. Things like our access to education, living and working conditions, access to health, water, housing, and also access actually to technology. So, which is not in this diagram, but our ability to actually make use of technology requires us to be able to pay for those technologies as well. Next slide. So yes, I've already sort of spoken to this in the first slide, but very much about legitimacy, accountability, and trustworthiness. We are going to see a world in which AI is improving our sense of agency. Then we will recognize, and we will need to recognize that there needs to be ways to build checks and balances into AI tools and technology so that AI can be more legitimate, accountable, and trustworthy. Next slide. So where do we go from there? So we've covered the why, and we've also covered the reasons for why we need to move towards this, what I call a broad ecology of participation. And it's really about kickstarting that AI literacy and critical consciousness at the different levels. And here I'm drawing from John Gaventa, who has a little cube that illustrates that we need to find different levels at which we can engage and influence conversation about AI. We need to develop different types of spaces, and we also need to engage and participate in forms that are visible, hidden, and invisible at the global, national, local level within closed, invited, claimed, and creative spaces. And in a way, what we're looking at is a configuration of it's kind of like a Rubik's cube. You can sort of configure different types of methods and approaches, but we in totality we want to see a broad ecology of participation when it comes to shaping AI. So there's some good examples that have been developed, such as a global citizens assembly on AI, citizen jury, council, data assemblies, people's panels, summits, and deliberative inquiries that are happening in institutional levels or institutionalized ways. So run by tech companies and also run by governments, regulators, and policymakers. Equally as important and interesting are the bottom-up participatory approaches, where people are organizing themselves in order to be able to shape AI technologies through initiatives such as civic data cooperatives, workers' observatory, and creative engagement with asylum seekers. Next slide. So 3 key things really in terms of vision for a just and viable future with AI, or a just transition for AI. The first thing is very much about participation, focusing on people's empowerment, which is often overlooked, but as I argue is really critical if we are to really make system change happen. The second is an approach to participation that centers communities, their needs, interests, and values, and investing in the bottom up as well as the institutional approaches to engagement. And thirdly, developing new and different spaces that enable the empowerment of those most excluded and impacted by AI technologies. So that's a very whistle-stop tour of a paper, next slide, um, which can be found via Google Docs. These slides will be shared, and you can also reach me on my email here. So thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Rima. That was a really great way to get us started, and especially to think about how AI is being used in digital participation tools, which is going to be the focus of our next speakers. So now I'd love to pass the mic to Yahweh to share a bit about the biases of AI models.
Thank you, Nikhil. I'm Yao Chow. I'm from Freaking Out My Foundation's Global Innovation Hub in Taipei. It's very my honor to speak at this webinar. First of all, we want to share our observation from our the experience of the hub. Last September, we held an event called Hacking Democracy Conference, where we invite around 20 participatory democracy practitioners to share their experience about they use AI for their participatory program. And the problems that we detected is when they use these AI tools to facilitate, to transcribe their discussions, we found that the transcriptions is not very precise. This could be something from the languages because in Taiwan, we speak Mandarin Chinese, we speak Hakka, Taiwanese, or indigenous languages. And when we use Mandarin Chinese to discuss, the transcription is doing okay. But if the participants have really strong Hakka accent or Taiwanese accent, we can find out there are obviously many mistakes in the transcription. And secondly, when we use an AI tool to analyze or visualize the results, the transcription of the discussions, we found that if we give the prompt to the AI analysis tool in English, the result of analysis is more precise or detailed than if we use the prompt in Mandarin Chinese. So the result shows that I think there is an urgent need to improve the diversity of languages and culture behind these AI model because we assume that these AI tools might develop from the major AI model that is developed earlier and is mostly in English-speaking country. And the results of it is the AI participation tools developed on basis for these models, they cannot precisely transcribe or reflect people's talks via using these tools. And the negative consequences it causes might be more than just making mistakes. Think about those people who not just speak Mandarin, also think about people who speak the languages that the minority use. For example, we cannot even think of now if there is any language model, AI model that can precisely transcribe the words of indigenous languages. So in this context, those people's opinion might not be reflected. And we might be running the risk of marginalize, exclude the minority. And the second crisis might be if the government, they use these AI tools without noticing this problem, the government can just simply claim that I'm not using just a machine to analyze this discussion transcriptions. The machine is neutral. The machine will not holding any personal opinion. So the results of discussions is correct. But in fact, some people's opinion might be neglected, excluded, or being distorted. So we think now if we want to use AI for facilitate people's discussions or analyze people's opinion, there's a need to address the issue of how we can improve the diversity of languages and culture of the AI models. And that's all I want to share. Thank you.
Thank you, Yahweh. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks. And thanks, Rima, for your contextual framing, and Yahweh for discussing the serious limits of AI and what harms those might actually create. And thank you, People Powered, for spearheading this research. My name is Matt Stempek, and I've been researching, building, using tech for democracy for almost 20 years across sectors. Slide, please. And that work is primarily done through something called the Civic Tech Field Guide, which I curate. It was co-founded by Mika Sifri, who's here today, and Aaron Simpson. And the Civic Tech Field Guide is an open global directory of democracy tech tools, including now over 600 civic and democratic AI projects. We also share jobs and grant opportunities in our community calendar and newsletter. And I'm proud to share that we're officially now people-powered members. So I want to use this time with you today to share some really cool ways that digital participation platforms are implementing AI to enhance participatory democracy. I'm sorry for my voice. I'm getting over a sickness. But fortunately, this is a remote event. Like my colleagues here, I have some discomfort about AI's broader effects on democracy, including existing harms. We're hosting this event against a broader backdrop of AI being weaponized against vulnerable populations by the state. So I just had to acknowledge that discomfort and tension before presenting on these exciting examples. I'm happy to share some bright spots with you today. For example, our research team was excited to see many creative features developed by digital participation platforms that move beyond the deficit model or the cost reduction framing of AI being used to make government smaller or more quote unquote efficient, by also using AI to envision and build new ways for people to express themselves and get involved in actual decision making. Slide, please. So before starting, we just wanted to define some terms here. The process hosts that are basically the institutions that invite people to take part in a participatory process. They select the digital participation platform where it will take place. Looking in the chat, many of you would count as institutions that want to use a digital participation platform. They don't usually build the tech platform, but they're more like the admins of a given participatory process and its digital presence. Slide. So a participatory process you're probably also familiar with, but it's a discrete program that invites the public or a constituency, if it's an institution, to meaningfully engage in shaping outcomes, like participatory budgeting. There's a fly in my house. Like participatory budgeting or allocating public budgets or co-designing policy. Slide, please. Digital participation platforms. And so those are the people that are using them. Those are the end users, aka the public. Slide, please. And we do all of this on digital participation platforms, which are the websites and apps where people can engage with a given participatory process online. Is usually remote friendly and it's often asynchronous participation. These platforms are usually run by either civil society organizations or companies, although in some cases governments run them. And our sample includes both open source and proprietary commercial platforms. So we generally focused on digital participation platforms that facilitate a variety of citizen activities rather than single purpose tools, like, for example, a survey tool. Slide, please. And, a single participation platform can host lots of different institutions. Slide. And then there are lots of participation platforms. So we've tracked over 200 of them, depending how you define them in the Civic Tech Field Guide. Slide, please. For today's purposes, with AI on digital participation platforms, we evaluated 30 of them that all of these have begun or are already integrating AI features to enhance participation before, during, and after a participatory process. We did a deep dive into how the features are integrated into each of these platforms. We use the live platforms wherever possible, plus surveys to platform developers, research into their marketing materials, and looking at screenshots and demo videos, basically to see how these AI features work. Slide, please. Drum roll. These are the top features as ranked by how many times we saw them on these 30 platforms. While doing this research, we established a set of 23 specific AI features that enhance participation in some way, which are basically all the ways we're seeing these platforms use AI. Two of the trends you'll notice in this set. Number one, as Yahweh started discussing, is AI for translation. It's very difficult and expensive to translate participatory processes into sometimes hundreds of languages that your constituency speaks, and many groups don't have the necessary resources. So translation is a common application for AI, although its strength varies depending on the language, as Yahweh discussed. AI translation can get people to a sufficient to good level of understanding in many languages. And one exciting thing here is that it helps translate between languages that didn't have resources between them as exchange resources before AI. So this isn't just about cost savings, but actual opportunity to reach and understand more people here, letting people speak in their preferred language. And if we can invest in better understanding of non-English languages and also specific domain terminologies, I think we can improve this one. The second trend that you'll see here is that most of the AI features we noticed and observed were helping participants and the administrators of a process interact with participants' contributions in some way. So that's summarizing big public debates, classifying what people talked about into some broader buckets, and synthesizing longer conversations. Many of those types of features are related to natural language processing, which is a subset of AI that actually predates this current generative AI boom that we're in, which might be why we saw it so frequently. It's been out there a few years, these NLP features. But this tech is also well suited to digital participation. Imagine you're inside an institution and you open up decision-making to the public and you get back 40,000 pages of constituent qualitative feedback, which is great. People participated. But if you do that every time, you might not have much time left to engage the public more than once a year. So NLP features like these promise to be helpful to estimate sentiment and organize the feedback along the broader themes of what the people were most interested in discussing. Now, caveat, we know that sentiment analysis and clustering are not infallible technologies. So if you're hosting a participation process online, you should also genuinely engage with participants' contributions as much as you can. Slide, please. So now I'm going to share 4 neat features that we found to be particularly innovative. I've looked at over 10,000 civic tech projects over the years while curating the field guide, and these ones stood out from this research. Slide, please. So ThinkScape uses AI agents to facilitate small group discussions and basically sit in on small group discussions of participants. But it also has those AI agents go around and pollinate ideas across the other small group discussions. So you know what the other tables, virtual tables, are talking about. And then it also surfaces what's happening in lots of the smaller groups up to the network level for the hosts to see. And basically this arrangement lets ThinkScape strike a balance that's difficult, which is giving participants ample time to talk and be heard in a big process, but also giving the hosts the ability to scale conversations to include many more people. Slide, please. Urbanist AI stood out because it lets generative AI do what it does best, which is hallucinate. It's a good thing in this use case. Basically, you can take a photo of your street where you live or your town and imagine a better version of it with generative AI. You can even draw on that version with your iPad. So this was one of the better integrated image generation features that we saw. And it points to a broader trend too, where a lot of AI is being used to augment participants on digital participation platforms as support agents. So we saw, of course, lots of bots and support features that basically try to make it easier for participants to come up with ideas in the first place, flesh out their existing ideas in more detail, and make their proposals more legible to other participants and the institution hosts. Slide, please. There are also some neat features to support sense making, which is basically helping people understand the results of a participatory process. For example, Assemble demonstrates its commitment to storytelling after a participatory process is complete. If any of you have watched Black Mirror, this program is called Bright Mirror. So in some cases, they literally hired professional script writers to bring participants' stories to life. The Assemble platform itself can also distill the debates that took place into creative formats like mind maps, videos, and even a comic strip summary to make it more engaging. Slide. And last but not least, on Insights and a couple of other platforms, each participant can now, using AI, see how their contributions are actually manifested in the final results of the process. This is a potentially powerful feature that, if implemented effectively, overcomes a major challenge in representative democracy. I would love to see this feature show up in more places throughout our democracies generally. Slide, please. So this data is already available. All of the projects I'm sharing are already included in the Civic Tech Field Guide and our open database. And you can find the AI features table that I talked about today at bit.ly/civicai and see, which platforms use which features. We've got hundreds of civic and democratic AI projects in the collection for your inspiration, and you can add any that we're missing or adopt it if it's yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. That's a really helpful illustration of how AI strengths can be leveraged for participation, but also thinking about AI's limitations. And now I'm going to pass it to Melissa to share our updated digital participation tool ratings.
Thanks, Nikhil. Yeah, so we've been developing our ratings for the last 4 years to help governments, civil society, and other institutions choose and use digital tools for public participation. And after we launched the edition last year in early 2024, we received a lot of strong feedback from users that indicated that we needed to improve ratings in various ways to ensure that they are a lot more user-friendly and useful for people. People particularly struggled with the quantitative nature of the ratings. And so for this edition, we focused on responding to this feedback to ensure that the ratings meet the community needs. Next slide, please. So for this edition, like I said, we focused on just improving that last edition rather than redoing the rating process, which we usually did annually. And together with Matt and 2 of our committee members, we researched and reviewed each platform to add more information. And to do this, we used research insights like the ones that Matt just presented. We also reached out to developers with a new survey so that they can provide more information. We use our expert reviews, past user and developer surveys, and we also looked at live instances of the platform. So we went and looked at how cities and municipalities are currently using the platforms for participatory policymaking, participatory budgeting, and other processes. We also looked at annual reports, case studies, marketing materials, and demo videos to assess the platform's offerings and features. Next slide, please. So that means for this year, the criteria and methodology remained the same. We didn't make any revisions to them. However, we revised each platform scores and added more information and guidance on each criterion. Some platforms scores improved because they provided more updated information, which is what we're always encouraging platforms to do, to share more information with us so that we can better assess your platform. These changes aim to both help users understand the ratings and to provide more accurate, up-to-date information on each tool. Next slide, please. Cool. So what have we done this year? What are the new changes? We've made a few updates, and I'd just like to mention 5. We reintroduced the overall score, which is this score out of all the 6 criteria that we have, to provide a clearer evaluation of each tool. This seemed to be a big contention point for last year. Everyone needed the score back. We also had insightful analysis. So we added short and longer narratives to each platform to add depth to the ratings so that organizations looking for guidance can better understand what each platform offers. We also created curated collections to spotlight some of the highly rated platforms, the accessible platforms, affordable and reliable platforms. we use Airtable, so users can also create their own list when they play around with filters. That will help you with like shortlisting if you want to go play around with Airtable. We also improved the filtering and sorting options with categories and tags to help users filter by languages, countries of use, features, participatory democracy processes, and more. So this can help you, shortlist the platforms that you're interested in or looking at. And we also added new tools and detailed explanations on how these tools are leveraging AI, along with guidance on how or the key factors you should consider when you're selecting AI-driven tools. Next, please. Cool. Next one. Yeah. So we basically designed the ratings this year to help you consider whether the tool is cost effective, is it accessible? So for example, is it being used in a region similar to yours? Is it accessible in the language that you need? Is it accessible to people with disabilities and all that? Is it reliable and appropriate for your context and your program? Does it provide or require technical expertise? Do you have the technical expertise in-house? Does it offer support if you require support? We also outline the features that each platform has. We also outline whether it handles data ethically and offers strong data protection and the type of content moderation that it offers. So with that, we hope you can play around with the ratings and they can help you with selecting the tools that you need. Next slide, please. Thank you. So yes, our ratings are now available on our website. Go look at them, use them, share them, and also share feedback with us. We would love to know how everyone is using this resource. That helps us improve it so that we don't keep doing the same thing and provide a resource that's not as useful. And if you are a platform and you'd like to provide more information so that we can improve your score in the next edition, please reach out and share information with us. We would really, really appreciate that. And we hope you continue to engage with us. Thank you for that. And Nikhil, back to you.
Thank you, Mel. I'm really excited about this new version of the ratings, which hopefully are going to be much more user-friendly and containing a lot more information than in previous years. So we could probably talk about these issues all day, honestly. We have about 10 minutes for a discussion. So I have a few questions for our speakers. Just to get us started, I'm curious what platform developers should keep in mind when they're creating AI features for participation and deliberation, particularly in order to meet users' needs and ensure that they're acting ethically. So I'm gonna call on Matt first for this.
Thanks for that, letting me go first. One thing to keep in mind that I thought was an interesting thing we saw, some of the open source digital participation platforms that we know and love, like Console and Your Priorities, are building on top of existing AI tools like ChatGPT, but they're building in a modular way. So that way, right now they're relying on the most advanced commercial tools, but they're also, in the future, you could swap out, and the admin of any given process could even swap out an AI model they're more comfortable with. So for example, some countries are sponsoring AI models in their native language, or the government-sponsored ones that might be more ethical than a commercial one, in your opinion. Basically, these can be semi-modular and hot swapped to power the same feature, but with a model that you like better. That's one idea.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I can go next. I think for me, as someone that designs participation in lots of different contexts and different settings, what kind of platform would I want to use? Probably one that's very adaptable and customizable. One that I could also imagine running in person, in hybrid, for deep deliberation, as well as the sort of more cross-cutting online discussion and deliberation. If I'm honest, I feel like I really struggle to find tools that do that. They seem to be designed for very specific purposes rather than to be adaptable. So that's just a conversation which is, I see a lot of platform developers online, but I've not found a tool that allows me to just do the full range and suite of functionalities that actually Matt you're describing. Maybe it's just too early days yet. It'd be really interesting to see if we can find or develop a one-stop shop in due course.
I think I can go next. So I think it's really important that the developers of this AI platform or tools holding the human-centric thought, because from our experience that we interact with all the practitioners in deliberative democracy or participatory democracy, usually their question is they didn't know that they are actually AI developers are really want to develop AI tools that is really helpful for democracy. And sometimes they know these people, but it's still difficult for them to understand the languages that AI developer use. So I think what's important is somebody need to create the bridge and spaces or platforms to connect the developer and the practitioners for participatory democracy. And also the developers need to do a homework, which is called translate your technical languages into the languages that these practitioners can understand, and to interact with them in their daily working spaces to really get what they need. And by doing this, we can ensure these platforms can be helpful. And I also want to echo Rema's feedback. I think other than thinking about making discussions being processed quickly or efficiency, we should also think about maybe some purpose of some AI tools can be augment or facilitate the discussions happening in the physical environment, not just online environments. This can be something that we can think of, not just thinking of we should develop this AI tool toward the directions of making everything online that is so convenient. That will make us neglect something that some chemistry can only happen in the physical environment. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Yahweh. Your point about like acting as a bridge with the public is really important. And I think it also echoes what Rima talked about in her presentation about moving towards a dialogue model. I have another question with thinking about kind of our global audience. What are some key regional differences in how AI features and digital tools are being used for participation? Melissa, you want to get us started?
I want to shoot this one to Matt first because he led this research, and then I'll build on that. Matt, you wanna go first?
That just means I'm going to take the obvious answer.
No.
Yeah, well, one thing that's come up multiple times doing this research with People Powered is, and Mika Sifri helped introduce me to this framing of how we critique democracy tech, is this lens of who builds the tech, who funds that building, and who uses it, right? And we definitely see this at the geographic level and in the civic tech field guide more broadly. But a lot of tech is built and funded in the US and Europe, and that it's used elsewhere. And that affects, Yahweh talked about what languages are well translated. That affects the cost. I know many people in Latin America that just look at the cost of a software as a service tool and they're like, that's ridiculously expensive. And there's no other pricing for people in different parts of the world. Much less more difficult questions of, how does someone in California think about questionable techno-sociological discussions versus someone where you are, right? And that's where I think the efforts to decentralize the building of tech in whatever ways are important.
Yeah, and just to sort of add to that, tech platforms have a high entry cost and infrastructure investment, and usually there's a question which is who funds civic tech, because the big unspoken elephant in all of this is that if you're paying for a really expensive tech platform, you will, if you're a commercial organization or AXA, expect a return on your investment, and that may well really generate friction with some of the values and the principles of civic tech, especially. So there's a sort of deeper piece here, which is about how do we get organizations and institutions who have historically funded civic commons type things to realize that tech is something that they should be investing in. So I'm thinking of, philanthropic organizations. Many of them are coming quite late to this game, and policy organizations as well. They're also coming quite late to this game. It's about sort of taking a bit of a step back and realizing that this isn't, just the sort of game in town for venture capital and other organizations. It's got to be for public interest, public service organizations too. I mean, in the UK, the BBC are doing some really interesting work on this. The British Broadcasting Corporation, there's a media organization. So I'm not going to assume everyone knows what the BBC is. So I won't say too much more about that.
I think I can go now. So in terms of regional use of the tools, the ones that we've looked at, just setting aside the AI discussion and speaking specifically to the digital participation tools, the ones that we've looked at are being used globally. One is being used here in my city in Cape Town, Fluidity. They're used in Zambia, they're used in Cameroon, they're used all over. So it's not just tools that are, although they're very Western, and I use Western to include Europe and the US, they are being used and adopted in a lot of global South countries. And they're used for different things depending on how the country is. So if it's an authoritarian country or a democratic country, it changes how the tool is used. Here in Cape Town, I think Fluidity is mainly being used for idea collection. So nothing more than that. Doesn't go as much as, decision-making processes. Some are being really embedded in like participatory budgeting processes. So, and that's what I'm just seeing from like the use of these tools in Africa. And I'm sure there's more in other regions, as Matt was speaking to, which is why like in the future, when we gather our strength, when we survive whatever is happening in the world, we want to expand our digital participation ratings and guidance to include more tools that are being developed from the global South in Asia and Africa and Latin America, so that we can offer more nuanced guidance on how digital participation is manifesting in different parts of the world. So that's next step. It's on our minds. Yeah.
Thank you, Mel. Okay, I have one last question for the panel. So imagine the world 5 years from now. How will AI and digital tools have changed the way that people interact with governments? So thinking about the future a little bit. Matt, go ahead.
One of my hopes in terms of the optimistic side of things with AI for participation is that it drastically reduces the time necessary to open up decision-making to the public or constituency. Like there's real efficiency wins there, even without firing anyone, to be able to run a participatory process more often. And I think that could be good in a few years. And then also we talked about translation and also chatting in the chat, this like speech to text transcription, I think is getting better and it's showing up in more places thanks to AI. And there's always been a known challenge with digital participation platforms that they engage people who are already digital. And I think some of what used to be called human-computer interaction, the AI that helps computers better understand people, how they already talk, could do a lot in terms of lowering those barriers. My fear is bigger, which is that AI will more generally erode our common understanding of what truth is. And there's even people experimenting right now with a digital twin of public participation, where you like simulate what the public would say based off, I don't know, the social media data you scraped or something. There's something called the Habermas machine experiment that did this. I think that's really dangerous because we know that like the data you have is a huge factor there, and the model. There's a million decisions along the way that should not supplant engaging the public. And also lastly, if you're beyond the broader fears I have right now, that interest groups are often very motivated and can game systems. And we've already seen examples in the US where interest groups astroturfed and they faked participation in a participatory process online. And I think generative AI makes that even easier to come up with like endless number of compelling individual stories supporting, your internet company. Whereas actually getting real people to participate is a lot of work. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Matt. We have time for one more answer. I'm gonna call on Yahweh.
Okay, similar to Matt, I also got hopes and fears. And my hopes, like if I can make any wishes, I hope the government can use AI to help people who encounter more challenges to express their opinion. For example, maybe AI can help people who have difficulty to express an opinion by speaking or by writing, and AI can help them to getting their opinion more articulated or more clear expressed, or it can bridge the knowledge gap between people who have received higher education or have different experience of life. But my fear is because we all know that how government is formed. We cannot expect that everybody working in the government has some level of understanding of technology. So and often that the government staff at the front line, that they have to go through things like public procurement of AI application. And in this scenario, it's difficult to ensure that the government can have a very comprehensive and ethical understanding about how to correctly use AI. So that's my fear.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Yahweh. I'm hoping that, working together with the people on this call, like we can move towards a more hopeful future with AI, and leveraging its strengths rather than the risks. So we have a few more minutes, so I do want to pass to Melissa just to share a bit about some capacity building resources that can be useful for those in the audience to select tools and design digital participation programs.
Cool. Thanks, Nikhil. Next slide, please, Maria. Hi. So on top of our ratings, we also offer free and updated courses, updated based on past participants' experiences with the course. If you're new to digital participation or you just need foundational knowledge, the courses are for you, because we understand not everyone can just come and know how to select or use a digital participation tool for a participatory program. And we develop these courses with the support of FNF to help you assess your community needs, goals, and then select a platform, set it up, and run a digital participation program. And these are self-paced courses that you can take on your own time, and you can also recommend them to your colleagues and everyone else you know. We also have we also have a digital participation playbook to help you design the participation program, digital participation program. With this, you can develop your own action plan essentially on your digital participation program. And if you use both, you gain foundational knowledge and actually design a digital participation program you can start implementing. So hopefully you will start using these resources. And if you need any more assistance, reach out to us and we will help you. Thanks, Nikhil.
Thank you, Mel. Yahweh, please share about your support for the Playbook module and online courses.
Sure. we Friedrich Naumann Foundation is really proud to support the this module and the online courses because first of all, our office name is called Innovation Hub. So our mission is to transfer the progress of technology into the strength for democracy. I think it's particularly important because we are witnessing like a lot of dictators or leaders in authoritarian country. They're very good at using technology to suppress the freedom of speech or suppress control of people. So it's also both important for we people who support and cares about democracy to have more strengths in the technology options to strengthen the democracy. And also, I think in this era of democracy backsliding, this is particularly important. So I really appreciate the people power for developing such wonderful module and courses.
Thank you, Yahweh. It's been great to work with you on these resources. Okay, so we're reaching the hour, and I want to thank everyone so much for joining. It's been a really lively conversation. A few next steps. Maria, could you share the slides? Okay. I think we're having some technical issues with the slides, but oh, there we go. A few next steps. So please do explore our digital participation tool ratings. Next slide, please. And we have QR codes for all of these. So yeah, please explore the new edition of the ratings to learn more about the different options for digital participation. Take our online courses, as Mel mentioned. Build your playbook. You can get a customized action plan for your digital participation program. In addition, you can apply for mentorship in our Rising Stars program, and the deadline for that is February 26th. So if you want personalized guidance from an expert in digital participation, you can apply for our mentorship. And the QR code is on the next slide. And finally, we are planning a couple of events coming up. If you go to the next slide. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And yes, apply to People Powered as a member. We have events coming up on March 12th, as well as March 18th or 19th on navigating digital citizen engagement and on mainstreaming participation. So you'll be getting much more information about those in your inbox. And lastly, we have a survey that we would love for you to complete. Your feedback will help us a lot to improve our webinars in the future. So yeah, in closing, I do want to thank you again for joining us. And of course, this is an ongoing conversation. So please stay in touch, and we look forward to seeing you soon.